Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and DarkDry Drew here on this Thursday, October the 18th, 2018, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, your second daily dose of happy for the day. And as most of you know by now, Wendy Dillard has decided to move on to do some other things. She's actually going to get her own podcast going pretty soon, and I'll be giving her a little help with that too. But she wanted to go in different directions. So she let me know that a few weeks ago. And since then, I've been trying to piece together who is going to be her replacement on both the Tuesday and Thursday podcast, which is impossible, of course, because there's no way that you can replace Wendy Dillard. But nevertheless, we have found replacements, and a pretty good one here for the Thursday afternoon podcast, because Drew is quite a young man and just out of school, but very interesting guy, and we're going to get to know him here during the podcast today. He is a stand-up comedian. That's why we refer to him as DarkDry Drew. That's Drew. That's the way you're introduced when you do your stand-up, isn't it? I mean, that's what I'm gathering anyway.
Yeah. It's. I remember a while back, my mom said, "Drew, if you're doing dark humor, you're probably not going to want to give people your full name." So.
yeah. Well, we're actually going to stay away from the dark humor here on this show. Yep. But for your stand-up, I can see how that would be really an important thing, because you want to keep your private life private in that case. That's for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. So who's Drew? Tell us who Drew is.
Who is Drew?
Yeah. No. I asked first.
Well, I lately getting back into stand-up comedy. I was at UC Davis for 4 years studying managerial economics, and so that kind of it's sort of like business with an agriculture focus. Okay. And I did well with it. I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I would, but it led me to opportunities that were much more important ultimately than just the courses themselves.
Oh. Okay.
The skills that you learn in college in dealing with people and understanding yourself. Right. And that's really kind of what I just completed that chapter of life. And so it's sort of fun to begin something new.
Well, congratulations, first of all, on graduating. That's fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I agree with you. It's important to... That the college years are kind of formative years in that you're exactly right. They're your first steps, kind of your foray out into the wider world after 12 years of elementary, middle, and high school, and it's where you're trying to. I mean, we all been through this. We're trying to figure out what we're going to be doing with our lives and what our goals and our aspirations are and so forth. And so to complete that 4-year cycle, that's an important achievement. So, well done.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the next steps, figuring out where to go from here.
Now, stand-up comedy, how did you get into that? Because that's not exactly your typical college curricula.
Yeah, so Dr. Karma teaches a freshman seminar at UC Davis, and what a freshman seminar is essentially an introduction course. So generally 1 or 2 units, and you can kind of take it, and it's pretty easy. It's not too demanding on the schedule, but it allows for flexibility in the subject material and all that. So she had one for stand-up comedy, and I had never done any stand-up comedy before. I'd been kind of like the funny person back in elementary and high school, but that never really, turned into anything until college, when I started taking that course, and it clicked with me right away. Watching Mitch Hedberg and Dimitri Martin, Stephen Wright, all those guys, it resonated with me. And I was like, I can take the weird, quirky aspects of myself, kind of satirize that a bit, and make people laugh and smile. And that's kind of the approach I've taken to the whole thing. It's sort of, although, I mean, like you're saying, it is very dark humor a lot of the time, and many people don't get the satire, but that's sort of developed through the course and then through time. It's been about almost 4 years.
So it was actually part of your curriculum at school then to develop this this stand-up side of you.
Yeah, it was totally unexpected initially. I just kind of took it. My mom was like, "You should take that. That sounds really cool." And I was like, I don't know. Because I'd had a mixed experience with art classes before, but yeah, it really, because then with Dr. Karma, we created the stand-up comedy club, which is still going on even after I've left, which to me was what mattered the most, creating something that was a platform for individuals to find themselves and to learn about each other. It's one of those things that it's challenging because with teaching others like math or something, you should be like, there's a definitive answer here. But with stand up, it's helping someone find their personality and then changing it to fit a different style of comedy essentially. So the whole thing was really unique. I got a lot out of it, and some of the students there are doing really well now. They just did a showcase recently, and these are the ones that they came in and they'd never done it before. And I was there with my friend Roman and Dr. Karma, and we're teaching them all and helping them. So it was really cool. I never ever would have thought to get that out of college.
Yeah, right.
One of the most important things.
That's pretty unusual, to say the least. By the way, we're getting variations in your volume on your microphone, so you want to be really careful. Make sure you stay the same distance away, because otherwise you're going to fade in, you're going to fade out, and that makes it kind of hard. So just kind of be aware of the microphone.
Yeah, I have a headset on, so if it's not working, just tell me and I'll try the other one. So.
Most of the time it's good. It's just sometimes there have been a few times where you've almost faded out so far we could hardly even hear you, and I was trying to turn the gain up, and then all of a sudden it switched back, and getting real loud, so I bring it back down, and yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I just wanted to let you know what was going on so you could address it, whatever you need to do at your end.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So, and also you have some prior experience with exploring the law of attraction, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. My mom had kind of taught me things like lessons from Buddhism, law of attraction, meditation, things like that through the years, trying different things to de-stress, to kind of open up my mind, get me to think about other things. And the law of attraction stuff has been the one that's been resonating in the past year, mostly because I think after finishing college, it was sort of an odd experience, a feeling of loss to some degree, because I'd had a 2-year relationship in college, and that ended. My best friend moved to Europe. All my other friends in college, everyone left.
Wow.
Back to where they came from. That's kind of how college goes, is you make friends and then everyone graduates and you hope to see each other again.
Right.
And it doesn't always happen, but, and so just at the end of that, and then I've had medical problems, stomach problems. It's called irritable bowel syndrome is what it's called, but it's basically, they don't know what it is really. And for years, I'd done testing, different diet, like we did blood tests, the colonoscopy, all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
And they'd never find anything. And this is Kaiser and Western medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no cure, and there are no treatments that they'd offer at the same time. So I just kind of was not necessarily despondent entirely, but not trying to solve the issue, because I never viewed it as solvable. And my mom, she saw me in a depressed, down state, and she's like, "Drew, you've been really negative lately. I get that things are hard, but start trying to look at the positives and see what's going well in your life." And that day, I was watching videos, reading, talking to her, doing everything I could. And since then, I was like a month or two ago, just every day focusing more and more on being positive, because it's something that's kind of gone up and down through time, and trying to solve issues like with the irritable bowel syndrome, where I was told there was no option. And then now I've been finding ways to make it better just in the past months. And a lot of it's kind of been the law of attraction of aligning myself with the goals. You have to look inward and kind of to check yourself. I think one of the things I realized was I was kind of jaded in certain ways that, like I was saying, where I was, especially because when I was diagnosed, I think I was 17 or 18. And I think of people have like an idea of what IBS is, but the severity of it can be crippling. I mean, in college, I think I missed about half of my classes.
Wow. Yeah.
And if it wasn't for the disability accommodations, it would have been, I'm not sure that I could have graduated, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
But because of that, it made all the difference. And so sort of aligning myself with the life that I want to live, of being healthier and doing all of that, it was one of those things that once I fully kind of committed to the health stuff within the past few months, it's already been a huge difference. Cutting out sugar, cutting out caffeine, trying to meet artists. The one I mentioned it to you when we first talked. The thing that I really knew was the moment was when I was talking to my mom, and I'm like, Mom, all my friends have moved back, and I got to find new people to talk with, and then all of a sudden, I see your ad talking about law of attraction and all of these other topics that I, already had an interest in.
Right.
You're looking for a comedian to talk to. And so, wow, all of this is making sense,
It does. Yeah, it's surprising how often it works out. By the way, there's something that I did not tell you about because I didn't realize you were dealing with IBS when we first talked. Is I have also dealt with IBS in my life. I first started experiencing it in my late 30s and early 40s, and I know exactly what you mean. I know how debilitating it can be, and it can be really pretty rough. Like you, both of us had our own paths that we went to, go through with this, and my understanding is everybody has a different path that they go on, and they have different solutions that work, and one solution works for one person, it doesn't work for the next person, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of like a catch-all kind of a situation. For me, you know what the difference was for me? It was positivity. That was part of it, for sure. Because around the same time, shortly thereafter, that I started dealing with the IBS conditions, it's when I first encountered The Secret and the Law of Attraction back in November 2007. And I'd actually been dealing with the IBS for about a decade at that point, but I had made some progress with it. But my wife actually sat me down and at one point said to me pretty much the same thing that your mom said to you, which was, do you realize how negative you've been? And my initial reaction was, no, I'm not.
Yeah, exactly.
I really didn't think I was. But then I started looking closely at conversations that I'd had and interests that I was focusing on and so forth, and it began to dawn on me just how negatively my focus had been oriented. And that was a bit of a wake-up call right there. And ultimately that led to me doing this podcast, among other things.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then the other thing that worked for me, believe it or not, was water. I mean, I have cut down on sugar and other things like that, but just keeping myself hydrated made a huge difference. And whenever I find the symptoms recurring, it's like a reminder to me, oh, yep, keep hydrated, keep drinking the water. It makes a difference. And it really has. It's made a huge difference. The combination of those two things, refocusing on positive stuff and keeping myself hydrated, that has eliminated about 98% of my symptoms. So, I don't say I have the cure, but it's simple stuff like that, right? It's always the easy little things that make the difference.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that. The one I learned recently that seems to be making a difference is to not drink any liquids during meals.
Oh, interesting.
Half hour before, half hour after. So you've got a big gap where you're not drinking, so that when the food goes through, it's just digesting the food. There's nothing to dilute it. So I think for me, part of the problem is a stomach acid problem. And of course, every time I request something from Kaiser, I'm like, hey, can I get this test run? They're like, yeah, we don't think that's gonna show anything. So it's just been all on my own trying to guess. But digestive enzymes and probiotics. We're making, it's cool because now because at first I shifted to this, it's called the GAPS diet. and I was trying that one. It's like meant for autism, schizophrenia,
Mm-hmm.
whole bunch of mood disorders,
Mm-hmm.
stomach problems. It sounded kind of like a catch-all, but it was really well rated on Amazon, and I tried that. The core idea was starting with just a bone broth, which you make yourself by just boiling bones, and then eating meat. And so for 2 weeks, I did just that, and which I'll tell you, I hit a few walls during that time of like, oh my God, I'm not sure I can, do this anymore. 3 times a day eating just bone broth and meat.
Mm.
But at the end of it, I started noticing that my sugar cravings were going down. I'm at a healthier weight. Not that that was ever really the focus. It was just the stomach problems, really. And then sort of having to some degree improvements. But I think with IBS, it's like you're saying, it's one of those things where you slip up on one thing, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden the symptoms remind you that it's like, hey, you never cured this. This is something that's lifelong. So
I've actually
yeah,
been trying to adopt the idea, uh, we can call it law of attractionally, that it's not lifelong, that it's only been sticking around because I have insisted on it sticking around. And I've had some success with that. Not entire,
yeah,
but some success. There have been long tracks of time where I don't even remember it anymore. I just completely forget that I was ever dealing with it. And so it kind of encourages me to think, you know what? If I stick to my belief that I'm building, that I can get rid of this thing permanently, maybe I really can. Maybe this is a thing that I can truly attract a purely healthy lifestyle, purely healthy experience in life. And if that happens, like, cool, I'll take that every time.
yeah, yeah. That's something I've wondered about too. Is how much of that, or even growing out of it. Because my cousin's like 20. I think he was like 27 when all of his stomach problems and allergies just like stopped.
Mm.
And so obviously, just waiting it out doesn't sound very fun,
No,
but
no.
you know, as the body changes, I'm sort of optimistic in that regard. That I think things would mellow out hopefully. But my mom has stomach problems and my dad has different stomach problems,
Oh
so I
boy.
have like double stomach problems
Yeah, I hear
essentially.
you. Yeah, you got a little bit of
Uh, you know,
genetic background going on there.
yeah.
Yeah, I hear
So
you.
it's a process. I think the main thing that really helped was just acknowledging kind of like that I have to solve this. No one else is going to solve it for me, and to not accept what the doctors say. Because I went to different people. I a bunch of GIs, a bunch of I did a naturopath too.
Hmm.
But and I'll tell you what was interesting was going to none of them solved it or even really made huge strides in fixing it or fixing the symptoms. But a lot of the information, if you look at it enough, you'll find like just one piece that's helpful. And
Right.
so that's sort of the diet and lifestyle I've been working on is kind of just this like Frankenstein of advice, But it's getting there.
It's a good idea to do that. I like that you're focusing on finding what works for you because I think that actually is if there's a single cure, it's that. It's discovering what how your body reacts and understanding what your body reacts to, and that just
Yeah,
takes
exactly.
time. I mean, it takes time and just kind of playing with it and paying attention to it. In a sense, poking and prodding it, asking it questions,
Yeah,
all that kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. Because I've wanted to make videos with different methods on how to cope with these problems. Because for me personally, doing artwork was like the biggest thing.
Really,
Doing filmmaking, doing stand-up comedy, all of that was what really got me through the flare-ups and all of that kind of stuff. Um,
what
but
kind
the
of
same,
filmmaking have you been doing? I mean, you had mentioned that before, so tell us about the filmmaking.
let's see. The start of it was I've always loved horror and sci-fi films, and so I kind of wanted to. Well, one of the problems with those genres is that the writing is oftentimes kind of the thing that'll fall apart on
Yeah,
you.
no kidding.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, So it'll be like, oh wow, these are visually stunning, and then it looks like it was written by a child, and it's like a $200 million film. So I kind of wanted to make better written horror and sci-fi films and
I hear
stuff.
you. Yeah.
So we shot a short film that's um we don't have enough money for festivals right now because I'm focusing on my health stuff, and my friend is, I guess he's technically stranded in Georgia in Europe right now.
Mm.
And so we kind of have just been like taking a back seat. But in our last year of college, because I have a writing partner, my best friend, the one that moved to Europe, best friend of 10 years, for our honors, the creative capstone project, what it's called, because he and I are in the honors program at UC Davis. We wrote a dystopian black humor sci-fi.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if you've seen, there's an old, it's in the 90s. It's a French film called Man Bites Dog, and or American Psychos, the American kind of style of it.
Okay.
But we basically wanted to tackle a whole bunch of social issues and things that we cared about, people destroying the environment, all that kind of stuff. Because one of those things where people will be like, well, yeah, we know people are destroying the environment, and it's like, well, yeah, but nothing has really gotten that much better yet. We're still trying to get there. And so the film kind of has a whole bunch of just really absurdist and very dark kind of distortions of reality.
Mm.
We found in writing it, because it's that some of the ideas, real life was catching up with what we were writing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So at first we're like, oh, this is just outrageous. We'll put this in there. That's a great scene, and it'll make fun of this idea, and people maybe realize that, and then all of a sudden, looking on the news, it's like, oh gosh, this is actually happening right now, in China or something like that. And so, which was kind of a little. I guess it was a bit validating, really, because it's like, okay, so we're pretty much on the right track if the points we're making here are now being seen in real life.
See, what that says to me is you're basically proving to yourself again and again how the law of attraction works. Because whatever you focus on, you get more of. So you focused on it, and you got more of it. It's like, duh, yeah, law of attraction works.
Yeah. So trying to find positive angles and.
Well, yeah, it's like be careful what you wish for, right? It's the old cliche. Yeah. Well, that's the same thing that's true here. Because I would say that's probably the hardest early thing to come to grips with, to come to terms with, when you become aware of and educated about how the law of attraction works, which is we don't just use the law of attraction to attract the nice things in life. Everything in our lives we attracted. And
yeah.
That's a little intimidating at times. I mean, some of the things that went on in our lives, like, really, I attracted that? Oh no! Or to put it another way, like I often like to say, "Damn, I can't get away with anything. It's terrible."
That's something that, like I was saying, it's to some degree something that's finally sort of clicking with me gradually. But the impacts, of how far it reaches into my life, that's what I'm learning slowly. So.
Yeah, I think we all are. But it's good. It's a good thing to learn, because that's part of how we as human beings not only come to terms with the fact that the law of attraction really does govern so much of what happens in our lives, but also it encourages us to kind of take control, to take responsibility and take control of what are we going to focus on? What are we going to think about? What's going to be our belief structure? What do we really, really want in our lives, and do we really want to focus on that stuff that we're bringing in that we don't like so much?
Yeah, that's exactly. And that's kind of where I'm. It's one of those things where it's sometimes hard to catch where you've gone wrong, maybe in attitude or something. But that's recently I went and had a difficult conversation with each family member, just trying to clear up any old things that bothered me, and vice versa and stuff. And with the intention of, pure positivity and coming from a place of love. And it was pretty tough to do, but I feel way closer with everyone now, and I feel like I'm becoming, because when you're younger, your parents are your parents, or your guardian, whoever it is that you live with, like they're more of up above. But then now I'm at the age where a lot of the problems my parents are facing, I can understand and relate to that, and they can relate to my stuff, because we're all kind of to me, it always felt like once you get out of high school or maybe college, like age doesn't matter anymore. Like being 2 years apart is just as good as being, because the difference in our age, even, just the ability to talk across ages.
I mean, we're 38 years apart. We have a bigger gap between our age than you are old.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I love that. That's what I was looking for. It doesn't matter what the age is. You can learn something from everyone. So that's what I thought was cool about this, with the law of attraction focus and the positivity focus. So it's just what I needed.
Well, I'll tell you honestly, when you told me how young you were, first of all, it kind of surprised me, because your voice is a very mature sounding voice. So when you told me you were 23, I said, whoa, okay. But I liked it because, when you get up there in years, you like having the young connection, so to speak. It becomes more appealing the older you get. And so bringing on somebody who was quite a bit younger was really appealing to me, like very, very much appealing. So, and you're not the only one either. One of the people who are going to be doing the Tuesday afternoon podcast with me, Alex King, she's also a young woman, and very interesting. I mean, you mentioned various kinds of autism and those kinds of emotional disorders. She's actually an Asperger's patient. She has Asperger's syndrome. Yeah. And we had a really fascinating discussion on Monday, because Monday afternoon is normally Patty Framo, a life coach from the San Diego area in California. And Patty had been up in San Francisco this past Monday and had flown back home. And when she got home, was feeling really not very good at all. And contacted me about 10 minutes before the podcast saying, Walt, I'm really not feeling up to this. I'm sorry, but I just can't do it. And I'm thinking, oh, my goodness. Because not 10 minutes before, I had finished interviewing Alex. And she was a good interview. And I'm thinking, I wonder if Alex would want to sit in. So immediately after I'd gotten off the phone with her, I get back on the phone with her and say, hey, Alex, my 4 o'clock co-host had to bail on me. Do you have any interest in stepping in at the last minute? She said, sure.
Hey, there you go.
It was great. Yeah, talk about law of attraction, right? So, I mean, it was a perfect... It's one of those situations where you get the feel that the universe really does have your back, right? Because that could have been something that you could just kind of fall apart. It's like, oh my God, now what do I do? And instead, it was just seamless, absolutely seamless. And we had a great conversation about Asperger's. I mean, she gave me a really good education about what it's like to be someone with Asperger's syndrome. So, yeah, I love the fact that I had that education, but more importantly, I love the fact that we're bringing on younger people to the podcast, because I think, well, I mean, anything, no matter what you're doing, has to grow over time. And in order for that to happen, you have to have all ages involved. Otherwise, it becomes an old person's thing.
Out of touch and sort of, unaware.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I definitely don't want that. That would be death as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, this has been good. This is good, and I'm glad that we're bringing you on. I just realized I broke a rule that I had set for myself over the last few weeks. I've been trying to get our promos done early on the podcast, usually like in the first 5 or 10 minutes. We're now halfway through, and I'm thinking, I really should get the promos in. So I'm going to get the promos in now, if that's okay with you.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
So we always have 2 promos that we're doing every single podcast, and our regular listeners know them real well, but it goes like this. The first promo is, if you are new to the podcast, maybe this is the first one you've listened to. Maybe you've listened to a few and you've heard some stuff you liked. Well, why not become a subscriber? Because when you subscribe, all of the podcast episodes come streaming right to your smartphone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android or an iPad or whatever, any kind of tablet you use, doesn't matter what your device is. They all come streaming right to your device so that you can pick up and listen to the podcast anytime that works for you. And I got to tell you, Drew, one of the things I really love is we've gotten to the point now where our listenership is big enough that we have binge listeners, people who just listen to episodes back to back to back. I just think that's the coolest thing in the world because, I've been doing this thing for 6 years, and for the first 4 years, it was probably me and Joel and maybe, 5 other family members listening to this thing. And now we've gotten to the point where hundreds of people are listening, and they're binge listening. I never thought that was going to happen, but it is happening, and it's cool, and I'm loving it. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a new development with the age of the internet,
Exactly.
Netflix, definitely.
So. Yeah, so I am proud to say we have binge listeners, and we're inviting you to become a binge listener too, or even just listen to an episode whenever you need to just get that daily dose of happy. If you're not really sure how to subscribe to the podcast, there are instructions on the homepage of our website at loatoday.net. Very simply, there's an icon for people who are Apple, iPhone, iPad users, and another icon for Android users, and a third one for everybody else. You just click it and just kind of walks you through the steps. If you're in the everybody else category, and there aren't a whole lot of those, but there are some, if you click on the icon and you get a bunch of code and not much else, it means you need to load some kind of a podcast app into your phone. And whatever device you use, you're going to need to figure that one out because I know how to do it with Androids. I know how to do it with iPhones. I'm not sure how to do it with the others, so you're on your own, folks. Sorry, I can't help you with that one. But we do have it figured out for the iPhones and the app and the Androids, and you just follow the steps with those. It's real simple. And then the other issue, the other promo we like to do every day is to ask both our new subscribers and our existing subscribers to be posting on social media that you're listening to loatoday.net. Hopefully you say something nice. Like Joel said this morning, Joel Elston does the Thursday morning podcast with me. He says, you can say something like, I hate Joel Elston. Well, okay. If that's really what it is, feel free. But whatever you do, just say something about loatoday.net because the combination of how social media works and the law of attraction is helping us reach more and more people. And Drew, my goal, my dream, my greatest desire for this podcast is that we get to the point where we're reaching thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people on a daily basis, episode after episode, and encouraging them and helping them to get into that better feeling place every single day. And I just it actually boggles my mind to try to imagine it all. But I keep asking myself, what will this world be like when huge numbers of people are getting their daily dose of happy and it's positively impacting their lives? I don't think we can actually count up all the ways that it would make things better, but I think from like a gestalt, from a 35,000 foot view, I think the world becomes tremendously better when that happens. That's my dream anyway.
Yeah, I love that dream. That is, it's basically my dream, but with my own stuff. And so I think that collaborating and doing this is a great idea. It's, if you just changing one person's life, you can see how big the impact is.
Yeah.
There are a few students from my mom's school that I helped with college stuff and helping them, get into UC Davis and get situated, and just seeing them go from how nervous they were and then getting into it, and now one of them is going to be graduating this year.
That's great.
So, just the impact of like the small things that you can do in your life, even if it's just providing support for someone, because then then he's going to go on and be a counselor, and then he's going to be helping kids, and
right.
Those kids eventually will they'll have learned empathy. That's one of the big things that you got to teach kids empathy in elementary and high school, because if not, they don't really it's all of that. Yeah.
There's a whole lot of good that happens when you see growth happen one person at a time. That was something that my wife, when I first met her, would emphasize a lot. Because when I first met her, I was still dealing with a lot of my dark issues, right? And in the course of doing that, we would have discussions about what's going on in society at large and so forth. And her reply always came down to this: I can't fix society, but I can help people I know. And so I help people that I know. And that's what she did. She was a psychotherapist for 10 years. So she actually was directly involved in helping people who were in really bad places turn their lives around. Now, eventually, it got to be a little bit more than she could handle, so she moved on to other things. But the point is, she's right. If you focus on not trying to fix societal problems, but helping people just on an individual basis, and you keep doing that over and over again, eventually the cascade effect starts to kick into gear. And all of a sudden you start seeing a societal change happen, often in ways you don't even know how it happened. Other than, you contributed to it somehow, but you're not really sure exactly how it all played out. All you know is you did your part and something else improved.
Yeah. Even just helping yourself, has an exponential effect.
It does.
You're doing better, then the people around you will have a better time, and you'll be able to add value to their life and back and forth.
Every once in a while, we get contacts from the people who are listeners to the podcast. I had an email today from one of our listeners, a woman named Beth, who wrote me a really kind email. I normally do the podcast with co-hosts. In fact, like 99.999% of the episodes are with co-hosts. But I broke the pattern about 2-3 weeks ago. I did a special podcast on a Saturday, which I don't normally do. It was about 25 minutes long, something like that. And it was on the topic of politics, which is normally something we try to stay away from because it's such a negative topic, and we really don't want to go negative. But there was it was at the time when Brett Kavanaugh had been confirmed to the Supreme Court and had created so much angst. There was so much anger and so forth. And I just felt this driving need to put out a message that said, hey, everybody, it's not the end of the world. Chill out. And remember what it is that we as law of attraction practitioners believe in, which is what we focus on is what we tend to bring into our lives. So may I suggest stop focusing on how much angst you're feeling about the political situation, no matter which side of the fence you're on, but particularly if you're on the anti-side, and refocus on what it is that you love, refocus on what's important to you, and take your attention away from what you don't like, because we all know as law of attraction practitioners, we need to focus on what we want and not on what we don't want if we want to bring what we want into our lives. If we want to keep focusing on what we don't want, we're just going to get more of that. We're going to bring more of it into our lives. We don't need that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there's some, whether or not, you believe in the collective consciousness idea, definitely seems like there's a lot of negativity and just sort of a lack of education and empathy in the world. And that seems to kind of be poisoning, a lot of things. And so sort of just focusing on the good and filling that in and displacing all of that, the things that you can't change personally, but, in your own contribution and with everyone else's contribution, it sort of does make that paradigm shift.
And actually, I would say that the biggest thing I've done with the podcast is to change me.
Yeah.
Along the lines of what you're talking about. And in the process of doing that, unexpected things have happened. I mean, that's law of attraction too. You get synchronicities, right? Things that happen that you don't really expect to happen, and boom, this nice thing happens that was, it was unexpected and it was nice. And when you start working on yourself and improving yourself, I found that it gets me to the point where not only do I expect good things to happen, and not only do I end up focusing a lot less on negatives, and I have done that to a large extent, but it actually gets to the point where I just forget about the negatives, which is strange. Yeah. I mean, literally, there are many things I used to get really wound up about. And I was a political science major in college, so you can imagine where my orientation was, right? And I used to get really wrapped up in that kind of stuff. Today, I have to look back over like the last couple of years and realize I don't even pay attention to most of it anymore. I mean, there's a small segment of it that I look at, but for the most part, it's like gone from my awareness, which is really good. It's a very nice change. And boy, it's good for the frame of mind. It's good for your sensibilities. It's just, ugh. But that when you start making that kind of shift, your friendships change. I mean, my co-hosts have all fallen into the realm of being very positive people, and that's had a tremendous effect on me. It's been helpful to me and my wife, both in our relationship and in our private lives. I mean, it's just you can just feel the tidal wave when you look back over time. That's what I've been experiencing. I can just see this wave of change that has happened in my life, and I can see it starting to spread out beyond my reach, so to speak. Partly through the podcast, and just partly through how I've who I'm talking to and how I'm getting used to people and how I'm reacting to people and how they're responding to me. That it's creating its own dynamic, and that dynamic is so much fun to watch.
Yeah, exactly. It's I've sort of been having a similar feeling with just sort of tracking my life and writing down what I do. It started with writing down the diet, 3 p.m. bone broth, meat, and just tracking that, seeing how I feel, and and meditation. Those two things really helped me become a lot more aware of my body, my emotions, all of that. I realized that most of the days that I was depressed or despondent were often when I'd be really stomach sick. And so kind of realizing the connection between mood and that, and cutting out sugar, caffeine, alcohol also, all of that kind of led to much more stable mood, sort of neutral. And then one of the things this was a kind of an odd one at first, but a lot of the positivity videos and stuff I'd see, they'd be like, you just got to think positive. And when you're like, because I remember for a few years ago, my stomach stuff I was horribly sick all the time. And I couldn't go out with this was like freshman year of college.
Wow.
So here I am, trying to make friends, meet girls, all of this. And I was like, lots of suicidal ideation and just sick all the time. And it was a nightmare. And then, you can't just think positive and have all of that go away instantly. You have to if you treat it like 0 is the worst and 10 is the best. And if I'm at 0 or 1, you got to go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. And so that kind of took a while to realize that and to find ways to implement that. Because if not, it's just sort of, it's possible, but you're sort of setting yourself up for failure if you're trying to turn it around from oh my God, I'd rather be dead than feeling all this, to trying to get to even a neutral place can be challenging.
Right.
To where you're just, content being alive.
Oh, it's so true. If you're at 0, 1, or 2 on that scale and you want to get 8, 9, or 10, you can't even see 8, 9, or 10. They aren't in your visual or sensory range. They're not even close. I mean, if you could reach 4, you're doing well.
Yeah. And then that's what it's even worse too, is when you go watch a video and they make it seem so positive, and you're like, I don't think I've ever felt that way, let alone moving up there gradually. So yeah, that's definitely one of the things. It's kind of a challenge, but working with.
Have you read the Abraham Hicks book, Ask and It Is Given, with the 22 processes they have at the back?
No, Ask and It's Given? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, the book is Ask and It Is Given by Esther and Jerry Hicks. Esther Hicks, of course, being the person who receives the messages of Abraham, the collection of non-physical beings from which springs all of the wisdoms that Esther shares in her workshops. But Ask and It Is Given is the first book that they wrote collaboratively with Abraham. And at the end of the book, they list 22 processes, 22 things you can do to help yourself get into a better place. And the interesting thing about them is each one is labeled to identify, they also have a 22-point emotional guidance scale. So it ranges from deep depression up to the highest level of joy and everything in between. And they've labeled each of the different 22 steps. And if you look at it, it's kind of a quick way of gauging where am I right now. If I look at the scale right now, where am I? Am I at disappointed? I'm at angry. Maybe I'm at contented, or maybe I'm even feeling happy. You can kind of identify where you are on the scale, and then you take the number associated with that, 1 being at the top, 22 at the bottom. 22 is where you're in deep, dark depression, and you take that number, and then you look in the back of the book, and each of the different processes are labeled for, okay, this process is good if you're between number 4 and number 16. If you're not between 4 and 16, don't use this process. And that's a really helpful thing, because, if, like you said, if you're down in 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, you don't want to be working on a process that's for 1 through 5. You want to be working on a process that's good for 20, 21, 22, 23, or 24. And they've got it laid out for you. So I had been aware of the book for some time. I've read it a couple times now. We even did a series of podcasts where we basically dissected the book, and it was really, really good. But the big point I think that the book makes is the one that you just made, which is you have to evaluate where you are and then reach up a step or two from where you are right there. Get yourself to that new, better step. And then once you're there and you're vibrating, as they say, at that new, better step, then go maybe 1 or 2 steps above that and just kind of climb the scale that way. And that's what those 22 processes at the back of the book are all about, helping to do exactly that.
Yeah, I got to check that out then. That sounds
Yeah, I'll send you a link after the podcast, but it's a very, very good book. It's so good I have 2 copies of it.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, the one I was reading was the Secret. I think it was about halfway through that. So.
Rhonda Byrne, yep.
And then The Power of Now, I think, is on deck.
Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joel and I were talking about Eckhart's book today, actually, and talking specifically about how time, that we titled it Time is an Illusion. It's one of those concepts that's a very difficult concept for us as physical beings to buy into and accept, even though we're taught it by everyone from quantum physicists to Buddhists to philosophers to mystics of all kinds to, I mean, there's like a wide range of people who tell us, well, time's just an illusion. Nevertheless, that's not the way it feels.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that much yet, but it's definitely something that's interesting to me.
Well, the way we discussed it this morning, Joel and I looked at it from the point of view of now, like Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, that when you focus on now, you're really taking time out of the equation. And now time isn't going to trip you up. You're not going to get wrapped up in hanging on to stuff in the past or worrying about stuff coming in the future. You're going to be focusing on now, which is really the only place where you can do anything. And that's the biggest recognition. You can only act in the now. The moment that we spend our time on the future or the past is moments in time where we're accomplishing nothing.
Yeah. Plus, a lot you can find yourself dwelling on it too, and that's not good.
Right. Oh yeah.
So
now you're living in the past permanently, or living in the future permanently. Like no, that doesn't work too well.
Yeah, that was something that I see a lot in the young people at UC Davis. When I was there, is they kind of, I don't think they're like aware. And I was trying to get some of my friends to kind of be aware of it, that they sink their whole life into just doing work and just where they're headed, but never where they're at. You walk that whole path, and then you get to the end, and you either enjoyed the walk or you're just aiming for the destination. And a lot of them, I don't think they were ever taught to really enjoy the way there.
Well, yeah, actually, we're taught just the opposite. As young people, we're all taught, nose to the grindstone, right? Work hard. That's the secret to success in life. I believed that for years. I worked that route for about 30, 35 years. It took me that long to figure out that it didn't work. Sometimes I'm a slow learner.
Hey, everyone has their own path, That's sort of, especially if you're an artist. That's the thing that's been the challenge for me is like, trying to get further in comedy, because sometimes it doesn't matter if you're doing well or not. It's sort of there's lots of shifting components and other people involved and all sorts of stuff. So, and it's all subjective too, right? Mm-hmm. So I've been just trying to align my vision and to decide on my path, on where I'm taking it,
Sometimes you don't even know what the path is until you're taking the steps.
Yeah. Even then, sometimes you don't quite know.
Yeah, that's true. You don't know where you're going all the time. That can be a little disorienting, to say the least. I'm curious. We haven't really talked about the comedy side a whole lot, but what is it? What is it that you love about comedy the most? I mean, is it when you do stand up, you get the laugh and you get that instant gratification? Is that what it is, or is it something else for you?
For me, I feel most alive when I'm being creative. Mm-hmm. And then also it's sort of it's definitely it has been, and it was a coping method for, when I'm sick and things aren't going well. Dark humor is one of those things that if you either like dark humor or you don't, but generally the people that like it are people that have suffered. Especially with the dark jokes. And it's sort of one of those things that I think for me, And I've had people reach out to me before too, because like getting laughs on stage is fun, and I definitely enjoy that. But I've never really wanted, like, a lot of the comedians want to be the center of attention, and for me, it's more about just the art and following, what I enjoy. Because I do a lot of like absurdist stuff, mostly one-liners. It's Mitch Hedberg meets Anthony Jeselnik kind of approach to things, and for me, yeah, it doesn't. Because some people, one of the, we did a showcase because I did a 45-minute like special essentially at the end of college for a grade actually. But I mainly just wanted to force myself to do 45 minutes, which for one-liners is I think it was 130 to 150 jokes,
which is pretty much an eternity. That's like a long time.
Yeah. And that it went well. It didn't, it wasn't superb because you never know who's gonna be in the audience that night. That's kind of up in the air. But we did our best, and it's one of my friends that because I have a few people that would go to all my shows, and then some people would be here and there. But one of them, he was like, "Hey man, I just want you to know that like, your comedy helped me through some dark times in my life, and it really meant a lot to me."
Nice.
And to me, that is success right there. Success is two things. It's when I'm doing what I want and I enjoy it, and then it's when it's helping other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if the average viewer were to look at, or if they weren't to hear me on this podcast necessarily and just watch my humor, they might think I'm some crazy sociopath or something. They might, miss the satire in it.
You mean you're not a crazy sociopath? What's wrong with you?
Yeah. It is something that's been it was a struggle in Davis in particular, because it's a pretty, like, I wouldn't call it like bland necessarily, but it's definitely like not the edgy town that, say, I guess Sacramento is comparatively. So for a lot of people, it did not resonate with them, and they kind of just found it. I think also the style of one-liners, a lot of people don't even know one-liner comics are a thing until they see one. But it's one of those things that's, I love it, so I just give it my all. And then for those it resonates with,
To what extent are you one of the comics who likes to connect directly with members of the audience?
One of my videos in particular, you can see I'm on YouTube. I've got all the stuff on there, but so every show's different, and sometimes I'll do crowd work, but I do. DarkDry drew, right? So it's somewhat a monotone approach, and kind of creating this character on stage that's sort of like all of the crazy things, all of the evil things, all of the weird things at once, but it's so absurd that it's funny. But at some of the shows, it's like you'd think that, being a comedian might be intimidating, and that the audience might intimidate you being there. But for me, it was at that show, and at a lot of them, like, the audience is uncomfortable and I'm comfortable, because it's kind of this this oppressive, creepy vibe. But all the people that find it funny love it, and they just eat it up, and it's really entertaining to just kind of what you can accomplish with words. And then I don't do like, hey, so what's your job? What do you do? Oh, not like that. More like a couple of the shows I went into the crowd. I like walked out and sat down in the crowd and just kept doing jokes and that kind of stuff. Just no one really expects you to walk out into the audience. So right. When I do, it's like, oh my God, he's coming at me now. And it's sort of I just kind of play it by ear. Some of the shows I'll just stand in front of the mic the whole time, and other ones I'll walk out there. Whatever feels right at the time. Have you heard of an empath before? That's the term that seemed to resonate with me. It's sort of, it has to do with I wouldn't exactly call it like a heightened awareness, but more along the lines of being a feeler person. Being able to read people's emotions, to feel the vibe in a room and all of that. So I always have a pretty good feeling of the vibe in the room when I'm doing stand-up, which is sort of interesting because that's something that kind of developed over time more, of being able to get more comfortable on stage and be able to read the room. And so kind of just writing out that vibe. And if everyone's in uproarious laughter, then I'll be, doing kind of more stuff like that. Or if it's sort of that just uncomfortable vibe and no one's ever seen this style of humor before, just keep writing it out. And yeah, I love it. So
yeah, empathic approach is something that I think is kind of built into me, because whenever I'm working with a co-host, or maybe on those occasions where we brought in a guest and I'm interviewing a guest or something like that, I inevitably am listening from an empathic viewpoint to the person that I'm talking with. So, like as I've been hearing you and listening to what you're talking about and so forth, there's a part of me that's kind of connecting on an emotional level and asking, okay, so what is it that's making this guy tick? What is it that is making him, what's driving him? What's his thing? What's exciting him? And that's the feel I'm always trying to find. And
yeah.
And so to that extent, I'm totally on board with what empathy or empathic approaches are, because that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, that's all. It's awesome. It's really, it's one of those things that's tough, because at the same time, like, I experience all emotions at if it's like, if the vibe in the room is bad, I can kind of take on that. And I've been working on sort of creating like an emotional barrier to get away from that, because it's especially tough. Because with the stomach problems alone, each day that I wake up, I'm hoping to have a positive attitude, and I'm doing my best. But if I'm getting sick, it's tanking my mood. And so finding that shift, and finding ways to kind of to block out negativity, which can be tough, especially if you have a family member, a loved one or roommate or whatever. And they're my whole third year of college, I had 2 housemates that were very toxic. And living there, I could feel it when I would walk home. It did not feel like a home. It felt like a prison.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of thing, which if you're an empath, it can hit that much harder.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, so that's rough. Whenever you're walking into a quote home unquote situation that doesn't feel like home, you're homeless. I mean, You may actually have a place to lay down and go to sleep, but you're emotionally and in many ways mentally homeless.
Yeah, I've been trying to think of different ways to, because I want to put out some, like, I guess, educational videos eventually. Because like I was saying earlier, where there's sort of this this facade with all of the positivity stuff, and not all of them, but a lot of them. How we're talking about, like, all you got to do is think positive and your life will be better. Instead, it's like, no, it's a challenge. It's going to take work, and you got to find things that work for you. Just sort of finding ways to explain that to youth, I guess. Mm-hmm. Especially because a lot of them, they don't have, like, with all the supplements I'm taking right now for the IBS stuff, I wouldn't be able to afford it on my own at the moment, because I was too sick to work. So my dad's helping me buy that, and then once I've gotten a lot better already, then start working. So I was just thinking, like, gosh, for a lot of these people out there, they don't have the means to solve their problems easily. Mm-hmm. And so it's taking small steps to get there,
Well, it sounds like you're taking some good steps for yourself, which is a great thing. And it means you're making progress. And I think I'm even detecting in the tone of your voice, there's like a hopefulness that maybe is a relatively new thing for you.
Yeah, someone else said that recently. Definitely. Yeah, I feel like I'm on the right track.
That's good. That's good. Well, hopefully part of that track is you continue to do the show with us. I hope you've been enjoying it so far.
This is great.
Good. Before we part company, why don't you, for the week anyway, why don't you give people an idea who want to find out about your dark side humor? How do they find out about it?
Yeah, if you like dark humor, if you like dry humor, if you like one-liners or just weird artwork, you can find me on YouTube or Instagram. Those are the 2 main ones I use. If you just search DarkDry Drew, you'll find me there. I've also got the 45-minute album on Bandcamp, which you can also just type in DarkDry Drew Bandcamp, and that'll show up. And you can listen to the whole thing for free or buy it. I'm not asking for money. I put the stuff out there because I love it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the comedians want to make money. Obviously, I'd like to make money so I can continue doing it and stay alive.
Right.
Which is a challenge in itself.
Yeah.
But I do it because I love it. So if you like
you.
any of that stuff, definitely check it out.
All right. Very good. Well, then we look forward to talking with you again next week. We'll actually probably have a third person with us, so we'll be doing that too. And we hope that you'll join us next time as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.